My name is Filipe Luciano, and welcome to Soul. Puerto Rican music just about reflects the history of Puerto Rican people. And it took a long, long trip from the west coast of Africa to what is now known Nigeria to Cuba, Santo Domingo, and Puerto Rico. And that long route produced a lot of different sounds and a lot of good sounds. The mass migrations of the 1940s brought most of our parents here as garment workers, and they still are there. America took over Puerto Rico in 1898, still controls it. And most of our folks came here for want of looking for better jobs. And they had to look for a different kind of a sound. So the big band sound developed, influenced a lot by the jazz sound, also influenced by a lot of the Cuban greats. Names like Chaputin, names like Arsenio Rodriguez, who was the greatest, the king of Guabanco, they call him. Names like Orquesta Sensación, Aragon became household names among New York Puerto Ricans, since many of us, not being close to Puerto Rico, were not influenced by many of the things that were there. But we began to develop a new kind of a sound. While the 50s was the era of the big bands, the 60s was the era of Latin Boogaloo, the era that most of us became interested in Latin music. But there was a reason for that. Most of us were not interested in Latin music before because we had lost, or we never had really, cultural consciousness. America's schools never quite equipped us to understand that we were Puerto Ricans and should be proud of it. There were a lot of other reasons for that. The Cuban influence had stopped after the revolution of 1959, so that our musicians really didn't have something to grasp onto. So we had a lack of Cuban music, we had a lack of cultural consciousness as a result of the American school system, and that produced a vacuum. And that vacuum was filled up by two essences, black and Puerto Rican. Puerto Ricans began to look into Afro-American market for a lot of the rhythm. So we developed a new kind of a sound, and that sound was called Latin Boogaloo.